Okay, so with brain and autism is a neurological disorder that severely affects a child's development. Primary symptoms arise in the social realm, particularly with language and social interactions. Many children have distinct problems interacting with others, communicating, and maintaining socially appropriate behaviors. They are not able to read emotions or facial markers as well as their peers. They generally tend to focus on an individual feature of the face, such as the mouth, in isolation, rather than seeing the global facial expression. This is strongly heritable. More information about how to normalize social skills is now on the horizon. New research suggests that biochemical relationship with autism may be more convoluted than originally realized, as researchers found that children with autistic behaviors improved during the course of a fever. Social skills training aids that help teach appropriate behavior and increase social awareness have been shown to help children with autism. ADHD in the brain. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD, is one of the few learning disabilities that has a distinct link to an environmental toxin. When young brains and bodies are exposed to even small doses of lead, damage can result, and often shows up in the form of ADHD. Symptoms of ADHD are caused by the brain's inconsistent processing of system input. Sometimes a message is sent through the nervous system and action is taken, but other times the messages the central nervous system receives are not processed in the organized fashion. Now, with biochemical influences on learning, ADHD and Tourette syndrome are believed to be caused by biochemical irregularities. Medications like Ritalin and Adderall seem to help people with ADHD sustain attention for longer periods and inhibit undesirable behaviors such as temper outbursts, distractibility, and frustration. Improvement is reported in approximately 75% of persons treated. In the classroom, investigators found that medicated students improved in the accuracy and quantity of work produced. Biochemical irregularities can be influenced by pharmaceuticals, substances we eat, and things we drink. Now, our bodies and our brains, all the way to the cellular level, are influenced by stimulants. Stimulants are used in the treatment of ADHD, and are thought to affect the speed at which the information is processed and the strength of connections between neurons. Stimulant medication may suppress non-compliant and disruptive aggressive behaviors seen in some ADHD individuals. Methylphenidate, also known as Ritalin, has been used to treat tics in children with Tourette syndrome. This reduced the severity of tics and ADHD behaviors. Not all information of stimulant medications is positive, and some advocacy groups claim that giving children stimulant medication sets up a pattern of abuse. Some side effects of the drugs used to treat ADHD are similar to other stimulant drugs, which includes decreased appetites, shakiness, and trouble sleeping or increased sleepiness, and others related to stimulating the central nervous system. The decision to use medication is on an individual basis. It is not appropriate for every child, and the school district cannot mandate that medications be administered to each child. Now, with some research on memory, how do we learn? In order to learn, students must be able to attend to stimuli. They encode information about that stimuli, integrate and store data in memory, be able to retrieve the data as they need it. Learning disabled students may have deficit in one or more of these areas. We are continually bombarded by data coming in from the senses. The chemicals in our bodies are balanced in such a way that we are able to stay alert, but also able to weed out unimportant stimuli. LD students often do not have these disabilities. Some deficits in arousal, they may not be alert to incoming stimuli, or they may pick up bits and pieces. Others are overwhelmed by the multitude of messages arriving simultaneously. For other students, the problem may lie in remembering the data that they receive. Researchers have proven that there is a biochemical link to memory. It may be difficult to understand and why some students have such difficult time with recall and memory. Research has shown that quieter classrooms will benefit all students. How can we as educators help students with LD improve memory? Visual supports, such as writing information on the board and having students take notes, can be really helpful. You can greatly facilitate learning because more auditory information is lost from short-term memory, or STM. Teachers can help students make connections between new information and their prior experiences. If we connect new information to old information, it is more likely to be remembered. Research on metacognition. Metacognition refers to knowledge and controls individuals over their own thinking and learning. This is the ability to think about what one is thinking about thinking. Active process whereby the individual examines information and makes a decision regarding the best way to learn it. This is best taught to children over the age of 7 because it requires an ability to think abstractly. Teachers and patients are advised to teach children various strategies for learning information on processes. Beginning in first grade, children can be taught to make predictions about what might happen in a series of events. By the age of 8, children can be taught visualization and verbalization techniques. Reading activities that require students to read a portion of a descriptive text and draw a picture to illustrate what the words said allow the teacher to evaluate whether they can convert words into mental images, thus constructing meaning from text. Teachers can also use think-alouds to model the thinking process, to guide students to give a series of a step in a process, to demonstrate to students how they can decide on strategies to help them comprehend and better remember what they have read, and help students throughout the thinking process when they encounter an unfamiliar word while reading or when the meaning has been broken down. Some phonological process problems. Often the first sign of a phonological processing problem is a delayed speech. At the age of 3, the child should be able to use pronouns like I, me, she, or he in a sentence with a more complex structure. Often, when there is a speech delay, there is also a corresponding reading and language issue. Difficulties with the way the brain processes the sounds in order of language. Phonologically based reading disabilities, PRD, are categorized by difficulties acquiring alphabetic or phonetic reading strategies. There is also trouble constantly spelling words correctly. What causes these processing difficulties? Well, we know that phonological processing occurs in the left temporal area of the brain. Children with phonological processing problems are able to learn when exposed to the right instruction. Some school districts provide training to both regular and special education teachers. One of the most successful ways to remediate phonological processing problems is with explicit and repeated discussion of phonetic principles. This is the timeline of laws on learning disabilities. In 1995, there was a law that was passed that involved the education of all handicapped children. They were entitled all children to a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment, including those with disabilities. They protected the rights of children with disabilities and their parents, and now it was revised and appropriated under IDEA. So, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was created in 1990 and edited in 2000. This was designed to provide government services for those with disabilities in the field of education. Criteria for receiving services is set at a governmental level. Child must fit criteria, requires an IEP, and parental consult. Extended service for children 2 to 5 years enforced by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education. Now, Section 504 of the Civil Rights Act. This is to prevent discrimination against those with disabilities in programs that receive federal funding, so in the work areas. Less specific criteria to receive services. This does not require parental consent. This just requires a plan set by individuals in the school district. And then in 2002, the No Child Left Behind program was set up where schools are held accountable for reviewing the students' progress. Now, the parental rights in the law. It is the intent of the law that parents will be involved at every stage in the evaluation and planning process and must be kept informed of their child's progress. It is important that school personnel make every effort to build a trusting relationship with parents in order to promote a two-way exchange of information. Parents have the right to require confidential information of their children's records, which is only a limited amount of people within the school that even should have access to them. They have the right to review and inspect all records. They have the right to have copies of all the records and any documentation regarding the child on file with the school. They also have the right to releasing records to non-school personnel when permission is obtained by the school in writing, to be notified in advance by 10 days of any meeting pertaining to their child, and they can bring anyone they want to it, and they can even record the meetings. They can request an assessment for the child. They can be apprised of the assessment tools to be used when the child has assessed his own, and have the child assessed in his own language. They can request an independent evaluation at public expense if they do not agree with the district's evaluation. Have input into the development of the IEP, the individual education plan. Refuse services or placement in special education. Have an independent, fully paid private school placement if it is deemed necessary to meet the children's needs. Request and have a fair hearing if disagreements arise in regard to identification, placement, or services. Now, comparing IDEA and Section 504. IDEA is used throughout a child's school experience, about age 3 to about grade 12. This provides individualized special education and related services that meet the unique needs of the child. A Section 504 plan never expires with the age. This provides services and changes to the learning environment to meet the needs of this child as adequately as other students. Now, parents usually know what is best for their children. However, using that knowledge to get services, to get help for their children can be very difficult. Parents can find more information online about how to become an advocate for their child quickly online by going onto ldonline.com or looking up Reading Rockets or looking up a legal group called Rights Laws, and they all have a variety of information that parents could use to advocate for their child. Now, with student rights, the courts and laws have given the student the following rights. The student has the right to receive due process if they get in trouble at school. The student shall know the charges. They should be heard in defense of self and have the right to review all documents that support the charges. They should be treated at all times with respect and courtesy by all members of the school staff. They should receive a prompt hearing if they are suspended or faces expulsion or involuntary transfer. They should expect a safe learning environment. They should receive a free and appropriate education or FAPE. They should be provided with accommodations for their learning disabilities. Teachers' rights and obligations. The teachers have a right to work in a safe environment. The teachers have a right to be treated with respectfully by their students. They have a right to be able to teach. Teachers also have an obligation to notify the parents before beginning the evaluation process to set up an IEP. Teachers have an obligation to follow the guidelines set forth in the IEP, and teachers should realize that the parents have the right by law to access and have copies of anything teachers add to a student's file.